Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Exploring Ancestral Wisdom and Healing. This is Denise King Francisco, along with David Cad Sturkin and Nicole Fix. The chat room is open, everyone, so come on in and join us. We welcome discussion and conversation, and tonight we are going to be talking about calling on our ancestors during times of crisis. So we welcome all of your input and warmth in the chat room. Good evening, Nicole and David.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
It's so good to have you both here. How are you doing, David? Well, both of you work on the medical front line. So, Cad, how is it going for you where you are?
Right now, I think it's going well. We're on the west side of Michigan. If you you've been following the news, Michigan is the third largest number of COVID patients, and but they're mostly on the east side of the state. So we're all prepped and prepared, and just kind of still waiting to see if we're going to get a surge of patients like they have on the east side of the state. But I think we're in a good place right now.
That's fantastic. The hospitals here in Grand Rapids are top notch. And all of our prayers and positivity sent to each and every one of you there at DeVos Children's Hospital and all of the medical facilities here in Grand Rapids. And Nicole, you also work at one of those medical facilities. How is it at your place of employ?
We are trying to get as prepared as possible. We're a couple of days we had a psychiatric hospital, and everyone is, it's trying to get the staff and, patients ready. And we have a system in place, a lot of preventative things and protective things. So I know a lot of the workers, it's somewhat of a distressing time, certainly, but I'm also seeing a lot of people feel like called.
Mm-hmm.
To serve, and seeing people kind of double up on that reason they went into the field in the first place. It's really beautiful to watch unfold.
I love that. Well, thank you both for everything that you do.
Happy to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've already got lots of wonderful folks in the chat room. Kelly Spencer there in beautiful Minnesota. My cousin Donna King down there in the Carolinas. Holly Hagan right here in West Michigan. And everyone else, come on and join us for tonight's conversation about calling on our ancestors during times of crisis. As I was thinking about our show, I thought to myself, first and foremost, isn't it interesting that we do that, I think, regularly, even during times of small crisis in our life when we have loved ones on the other side. We might ask mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or auntie or uncle for, just give me a sign everything is going to be okay. Let me know, what would you do in this situation? Have either of you ever felt that way or called out to a relative on the other side, Nicole?
Yes, I have, and it's really, I feel just heartwarming when you get that sign of reassurance, because I think, it's nice to be like, wow, this really is real, but then it's, so many of us need reassurance right now, right? So. Mm-hmm. Comforting.
Very. And what about you, Cad?
Yeah, it's been interesting for me during the last couple of weeks. So my mother always comes to me as a red cardinal. That was a bird she loved. And every morning when I get up and walk with Max, there is always a cardinal that is singing in one of the trees as we walk under it. And it was interesting, kind of when all of this started, the birds were just kind of starting to come back. from the South, and the Cardinal song has been really resonating with me. Just, I think, in many ways, it's peaceful, but it's also kind of that reassurance from my mom that she's there watching over me, and that there are others there watching over me as well.
And how do you sense that they're with you? Obviously the Cardinal for you is a wonderful sentry, that mom is there. Is there another feeling that sometimes you get, Cad, when you know that your ancestors are around?
That's a good question. I think there's times where I'm at the hospital where I'm caring, and this is even just beyond this pandemic, but there's times where I'm at the hospital where I'm caring for patients, and it feels like my ancestors' hands are extended through mine. So they're helping me do the caring. They're helping me. So I feel their presence with me. I had one of my aunts was a nurse, and I always feel her presence with me. She was the one who encouraged me to go into nursing. And so I always feel like she's looking over my shoulder and just kind of keeping me in line.
Mm-hmm.
But so I think there's just kind of that knowing in my heart that they're there. But sometimes I feel like they're physically present as well.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Nicole, what about you? How do you know? What's the sense?
I get just this flooding emotion in my heart, and it just feels like it swells up, and I just feel this utter sense of peace, and I get tearful because it's such a strong emotion. I've been feeling my grandmother so present with me lately, and I love that, Kat, that you brought up the Cardinal, because this morning as I was driving into work, there were two cardinals, and I just thought, no, and I just been sensing my grandma so much, and I always have fresh flowers. They just remind me of her, and I've been trying to be really intentional about continuing to do that currently, and I just feel her with me, and it just feel it in my heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is. It's one of those senses, I think, that the heart, I think that's a great way to describe it, is that we can sense it, we can feel it, and there's something that touches our heart, our soul, and we just know that we're not alone. And add that love tie, and we know that it's someone who shares a bond of love with us. And it's interesting, Cad, you and I are both adopted people. And the two people that you described, I'm assuming it's your adoptive aunt.
Yes, yep.
And your adoptive mother.
Yes, yep.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, the other thing, though, one of the things I was thinking about before the show that is, probably most of our grandparents went through the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of them experienced what we are experiencing now, in many ways. And so, my guess is that our grandparents are very close to us at this time.
Mm-hmm.
That they've crossed over because of the fact that they've been there. They know what they can offer us advice, comfort, all of that. And so, it's. So it's not so much our distant relatives that we have to necessarily depend on in this situation. It can be as close as our grandparents.
I agree. And Kelly Spencer is sharing She's saying in the chat room, that's what I get too, goosies. Then energy climbs up my spine, swells near my heart, and then my face flushes. Their energy is extraordinary. It is unique the way each and every one of us perceives the way that ancestors or loved ones are near us. And I think that we're equipped to have that feeling, to have that sense. And I believe that even after we've left these physical bodies, our spiritual body is very well equipped in its infinite consciousness to continue to be connected to us. How do you both feel about that?
I'm just thinking of, yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking how our hearts develop, and we're all connected through our heart center and through, I'm just how we, how do I want to say this? Just the development of our heart, the heart beating, the collective beat, and I'm thinking of like the beat within the earth and even, those of us like me with my grandmother, she's my maternal grandmother. And, my connection with the heart's the first thing to develop when we're in utero, and the connection through that sense, through our mothers, if that is something that we have with my mom and my grandmother, that connection. So I guess I'm thinking of it in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other thing I think about too is that, I think you put it well, Denise. Our ancestors never really leave us.
Mm-hmm.
They are around us all the time. I think we've all been kind of brought up to this idea that when they die, they go off to this place, and I really believe that they're surrounding us all the time, and we only just need to ask for their help.
Mm-hmm.
Or their wisdom, and they are very willing to share.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not somebody that's way out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's somebody that's right here with me all the time. So,
mm-hmm. And it's such a good feeling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about the show that we were doing. I always spend a lot of time, preparing myself for whatever it is that we're going to talk about. And I thought, here we are during a global pandemic. And how does that compare, Dana, to what your grandmothers experienced?
Yeah.
And, I come from, at least particularly on my father's side, both my biological father and my adoptive father, I come from a long line of warriors, military people. And I thought to myself, on the king's side, there were kings who fought in the Revolutionary War, the French and Indian Wars, the Civil Wars, all of the world wars, the Korean War, the Vietnam War. And, they're still fighting to this day. They're still in the military. And I thought, and what about the women? What about all of my grandmothers married to all of those grandfathers way back to the time of the American Revolution? What was it like for them in that time? And what sort of strength is available for me by calling on them? And on my mother's side of the family table, the same thing. What is the beauty of what my grandmothers witnessed and what they bore in Europe between the wars and the famines and the disease? And I really sat with it and I thought to myself, I do believe that all of our ancestors stand behind us and beside us. They are in our blood. They are in our bones. They're in our psyche. And calling out to them, I think, is one of the most simple, but one of the most profound gifts that we have during our human experience. How do you feel about that, Nicole?
Yeah, I think you're so spot on, because we're not meant to carry our burdens alone, and we don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, it's, their wisdom lies within our very DNA, within our blood and our bones. And they are, I think, so anxious and happy to help. We just need to ask.
Mm-hmm. Kat, what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I like what Nicole just said. That their wisdom is in our DNA, is in our bones. Because if you think about that, the wisdom that we need to move through something like this is already within us. And I think one of the things that I'm finding with this experience is that it's really drawing me within. I think we're all in isolation. We aren't interacting with a lot of other people other than those in our home. And I think moving inward and trying to find that strength, trying to find that wisdom is something that's being brought out for me during this experience. And so, yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, it's just calling out and asking for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that, Nicole. Thank you, Kat. Holly Hagen is talking about, or she's sharing in the chat room, that she often knows when her ancestors are around because she has a smell or a sense of smell that comes to her. So I asked her what sort of smell, and she's sharing Old Spice for her grandfather and face powder for her grandmother. I had forgotten about face powder.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a little stroll down memory lane. I know for myself, ancestors have been visiting me since I was a little girl, only I didn't realize they were my ancestors at the time. And as somebody who is a seer, I would see them and I drew their faces. And although their faces seemed foreign to, other people, to me, their faces were very familiar. And their energy was very familiar, and I couldn't explain it at the time because I didn't know my biological origins. But looking back now, it's beautiful for me to understand that even though I didn't know their faces consciously or their names, they were already appearing to me and letting me know that they were there. And it was particularly at a time when I was living in Apple Valley, Minnesota. Kelly was there, and Kelly remembers, and it's one of the bonding things that happened between me and Kelly. And really when my artwork started in earnest, and I would draw charcoals and pencil drawings of their faces, and they would talk to me and I would record what it was that they were saying. And all along, I was literally drawing my ancestors, and they were giving me messages from times past. And the dreams that I had since I was a very young girl, now I can look back as a grown woman and understand that even though I wasn't conscious that in my dreams the faces were my loved ones, there was clearly a bond that I didn't know about at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. That was very clear. It was very strong, and it brought them to me in my dreams. I think that dreams are one of the most amazing places of opportunity for us to share with our ancestors. Do either of you ever dream about your ancestors?
Yes. I dream of at least loved ones since past. I don't know about, ones that I'm not aware of, but I will, pray for guidance at times. And I always have deep dreams that, shed some kind of insight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have only ever had an ancestor that I'm aware of and familiar with come to me in a dream once, and it actually kind of surprised me because I had not had that experience before. It was my adopted father, dad, and yeah, it kind of startled me because, like I said, I usually don't dream about people that in my family. So yeah, it was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, when they lose a loved one of the very first things that may happen when the cloud of grief dissipates enough for it to happen, or there's a moment of clarity, they will dream about their loved one. And a lot of times people will say to me, Denise, I had a dream about my mom who passed last week. Am I hallucinating, or is that real? Well, that's really real. I mean, I think that that's about as real as it gets when they are able to come to us through the dreamscape, that vibrational space that allows for communication from here to there. And I'm a deep believer that there is no set time for when we can reach out to our ancestors and for when they can reach out to us, because sometimes we're not necessarily drawn maybe to ask our ancestor for assistance, or, hey, could you just give me a sign I'm going to be okay, things are going to turn out okay, that all is well, that I'm on the right track. Sometimes they reach out to us and we're left to figure out what it is that they're reaching out to us for. Have you ever had that happen, Nicole?
Yeah, I want to say I have. I don't have anything specific coming to mind, but where it's that like clear knowing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you just know and you just feel it, and you can't put your finger on it how you just know, and where that comfort that hits where you need it, and that there's something divine happening to help you feel that way.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Kat? Have they ever reached out to you? Well, when you dreamt of your grandfather, was there a message, or were you left to kind of decipher the message?
I think I was I was so startled I don't even know if I can remember what it was he was there for. But the one clear thing that I do remember is when my nephew was dying from cancer. Let's see, I think it was a year ago this fall. And I was sitting with him in his hospital room just a few days before he died. And both my mother and his other grandmother on his other side showed up and just told me that things would be okay and that they would be there to meet him on the other side.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Did you share that with him at the time, Kat?
I didn't. I shared it with his mom. He was kind of, he was kind of in a crisis mode at that moment. I wasn't sure that was going to be the most helpful to him. So, but I did tell his wife a couple days later. I think she may have shared it with him. So,
mm-hmm. That's beautiful. I think it's an amazing thing. It's an astonishing thing that really life is pretty astonishing when you think about it. When you think about where we come from, the antiquity of our soul, the antiquity of all of the ancestors going back to the very beginning of incarnation, up until this moment and future moments, and the fact that we're connected by this consciousness, by consciousness. And in that consciousness, there are feelings and experiences. And sometimes I do stop to think to myself, am I one of my relatives? Sometimes I look at Easton, frankly, my grandson. I was looking at him the other day, and I thought to myself, won't it be interesting? I wonder if you are one of the grandfathers who's come back.
Interesting. Yeah.
And come back in, at this time. The other day I was washing dishes. I think I shared this on our show yesterday, Nicole. I was washing dishes by hand. And I said later in the day to Todd that as I was washing the dishes, I had this sense and this voice, this inner voice that said to me, so many of your elders are leaving at this time in order to help serve from the other side. And I asked the question, serve what? And the answer was, what is becoming on Grandmother Earth? And for me, I found great comfort in that.
Yeah.
that their wisdom will be helping us from the other side. And Todd and I were talking about it a bit. And I said to him, the men and the women that are passing in their 70s, in their 80s, in their 90s, these are men and women who have lived through war. They've lived through famine. And if there's one thing that I know for sure, having grown up in a military household, the one thing that the Sarge always shared was, war is hell. You never want to do it.
Yeah.
Some of our greatest warriors that have ever been become our most humble peacemakers. And I had that very same conversation with my brother Guy up at Standing Rock. We were sitting around one evening around the campfire, and he said to me, sister, I don't know why they made me the chieftain up here of the Oceti. I don't understand that. I'm nobody. I'm nobody. Why would they want me to be the spiritual person up here? And I looked at him and I said, you're kidding me, right? And he said, no, I'm not. And I said, because you're a warrior, and the greatest of warriors always become those with the greatest compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me and his eyes welled up and he said, I have compassion. And I said, and where did that come from, Guy? And he said, because I have blood on my hands. And it struck me in that moment of being with Spirit that so many of the men and the women that have lived through trials I've not lived through are there now to assist from the other side. Nicole, when I share something like that, because you also deal with people who are grieving, do you find that people can take comfort in understanding that there's a reason for death, or that there's a greater reason, greater things can happen?
Yeah, I think meaning making is so important. Finding there is a lot of solace that comes from the meaning, and compassion, typically comes from our own suffering, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, not wanting, just appreciating the reflection of, I've been to hell, and I don't want anyone else to sit there.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, Lady Hawk. It's good to have you in the chat room. And a shout out to Mary Ellen as well. Mary Ellen Hagen. It's good to have you listening in, Mary Ellen. Cad, when you think about your ancestors, where do they come from? And knowing what you know about your ancestry, and you know that your ancestors were able to dig deep because here you are. When you think of them, what are the points of strength that sit with you?
Well, so I am Irish and Dutch. Several of the things that I think about in relationship to things that, first of all, the Dutch people went through. I think about what they went through during World War II,
mm-hmm.
And what the fortitude and the strength that they had to develop in relationship to being able to stand up to the Nazis, and it wasn't something that just lasted weeks. It was something that lasted, I can't remember how long they had were invaded into the Netherlands, but it was several years, I believe.
Several.
And so there was a strength that they developed, and also a willingness to really fight back,
mm-hmm.
and not stand for oppression, and not stand for things that weren't right.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I think about in relationship to my Irish side of the family is, many of the Irish people, when the potato famine happened, I think one of the things that they they had to make some very difficult decisions. Did they stay where they were, or did they come across the United States? And many of them came over here, and that was one of my ancestors did during that time. And so, I think about their willingness to step forward, even when there was a lot of uncertainty. I think one of the things that's been coming up for me during this time of the pandemic is I find, and it's interesting because there's sometimes I'm wondering if some of it is ancestral stuff, but I find that I'm being triggered a lot during this time, and that there's fears that are coming up. Some of it is things that as a result of things I've experienced in my lifetime, but I'm wondering if it goes even deeper than that. That this is triggering stuff that needs to come up to be healed, so that it can be healed for generations back. Because this is, you think about what's happening. This is unprecedented for any of us. We're being asked to do things and to not do things that we've never done before, and so I think it's really it's a challenging time, and I really wonder if I'd be interested to know if people in the chat room are also having stuff come up that they can't really explain about where it's coming from or what's going on.
Being triggered by the pandemic, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Everybody, please do share in the chat room. That's part of what we love about having chat. Let us know if you've got things that are boiling up during this time, and maybe you don't know where they come from. It could be something that's coming up, as Kat is saying, to take a look at and maybe heal in the ancestral line. That's a great point, Kat. And Nicole, what about you?
I think that this stillness is forcing a lot of people, myself included, to really kind of reflect on what might be coming up in the stillness, because some of our busyness is distracting from perhaps some discomfort, and then being in a pandemic where we're limited in our capacity to do things that we typically do, or even food seems to be limited. And having kind of this ancestral memories that may be creeping in about shortage or famine or whatever. And we do inherit the stress responses from our ancestors, so it would be normal, that anxiety is a stress response too. So anxiety can be really heightened, and how to manage that distress, in the current time.
One of the things I think you just brought up by Nicole, I think is really seems to be prominent, is this whole idea of scarcity. It's amazing to me that people are hoarding toilet paper.
Right.
But it just kind of shows you, and to me, it's kind of a reflection of that underlying stuff that I may not have enough, so I've got to go and get more and get more and get more. And we're seeing grocery stores that their shelves are just plundered. They're empty, and it's kind of a very interesting scenario. I think it's unfolding.
I agree. In the chat room, Lady Hawk is sharing that she's finding herself bursting into tears.
One of the other things I think, and I've been hearing some of this, I don't remember exactly where, but I've been hearing some experts talk about the fact that, the solution to this pandemic is not going to be something that's found at a national level. It's got to be found at a global level. And one of the things I think that's happening as a result of that is I think the isolation is helping us to really realize how we need other people.
Yes.
How we need to be connected, and not only connected on a personal or national, but now a global level. We need to figure this all out together. And I think it's bringing out just the need for connection. And so, yeah, I think it's just bringing up some very interesting things.
Yeah, it is. Holly is sharing, I'm feeling anger as well as a sense of prepping that is coming from a former life when I had to do so to survive. It really does. And Nicole, you can talk to this and what Kat is alluding to is that we are in that survival, and where that survival mode, and where does that come from? It could be just this lifetime, but I suspect that it's coming from other lifetimes and maybe ancestral memories and traumas of times when literally it was life and death survival. I mean, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. And, in that living on in our DNA and our soul, when that primal brain kicks in, that fight, flight, which they've added on fight, flight, freeze, kicks in, and that's going to absolutely get activated in a time like this. And, I'm thinking of this individualistic society too, just that scarcity that Kat's referring to, hoarding, got to have enough, and that, if you look at it, I would call it kind of this trauma brain of this primal instinct to have enough for self-preservation, and we're being forced to use kind of these evolved traits of our higher level functioning, our executive functioning skills of wait, I want to help other people have enough too, right?
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what Lady Hawk is sharing in the chat room. Exactly, Nicole. She's saying, I have a very hard time with being at work when so many are not. The calls I get daily are hard. I don't think I help enough, but do what I can. When I shop, it's minimal, so others may have something. Exactly what you just said.
Yeah, I feel that way with the shopping for sure, yeah. Because if we contribute to that problem, right, if we're hoarding, we're then contributing to the problem, the scarcity belief system, and we're being called to move and shift into this higher level belief of being taken care of, trusting that we'll be taken care of, taking care of other people who might be needing that from others in this moment. It's more of this collective compassionate camaraderie.
One of the other things I think that's interesting too is I'm starting to see more bartering going on. People who don't currently aren't working. So here's an example. Even though I am working, my sister is making masks for folks, and yet she was running out of hand sanitizer. So I said to her, you know what? I'll trade you 2 masks for 2 hand sanitizers. It's kind of that. Money has become a god in our culture, and it's kind of it's forcing us to really look at, can we get along? Are there ways that we can get along without it, or with less of it? And so yeah, it's I understand what Lady Hawk is saying in relationship to the difficulty of feeling guilt in relationship to being able to be at work and be paid now, because I think one of the things that I feel very deeply about is these folks young families that neither of the parents right now are working because, and maybe not even working from home, but not working, period.
Yep.
How are they going to feed? How are they going to feed their families? How are they going to pay their bills? It just, I get really, I'm getting real emotional about it now.
Mm-hmm.
But that really tugs at my heart, and I'm hoping that we can come out, the solution of giving every family $1,200. Okay, that money can be useful, and I'm not downgrading that, but I really think that we are being called to really look at how do we help one another.
Exactly.
How do we reach out to one another in this time of crisis, and as Nicole so eloquently said, recognizing that there doesn't have to be scarcity, that we can help each other out, and that you might have something I need and I might have something you need, and let's just exchange that versus hoarding it.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of when Amantha Murphy is here, when she comes to see us from Ireland, and she talks about her granny. And she talks about her granny being a midwife, and there were times when Gran would go off for maybe a week to be with the mother and the new baby, and her granny would stay there for a week, and she didn't take any payment for that. But when she got back to her cottage that Amantha now lives in, there would be chickens. There would be ducks, there would be potatoes, there would be food, and that sort of a thing. And we may call that old-fashioned here in the United States, but right about now it's becoming quite in vogue again.
Yes.
And the part of that Kelly, I have thought of you a million times for a lot of reasons this week, but I've thought to myself over and again, because I love to cook, and I'm a pretty doggone good cook. But I think about the wonderful wealth of recipes that Kelly has from her grandmother and her great-grandmother. And now for some people, men and women, they're now having to learn how to cook.
Yeah, absolutely.
From scratch. Right? From scratch. Exactly.
She made last week.
And gardens are popping up everywhere. And this is one of those occasions where we might ask, okay, Grandma, what would you do with this chicken? I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
Or, how do I plant a garden? I know that when I plant my 100 bulbs every fall, because now I think I've got 1,000 bulbs out in the Enchanted Forest. Now I ask my, my great-grandmother Erfman and my grandma Spohl to be there with me while I'm planting the bulbs. They were both from the Netherlands. So we can call on the ancestors. Now we're trying to look up grandma's recipes or maybe mom's recipes. Dane reached out to me last week to find out how I do the pot roast in the oven. And so I sent him the recipe for that. So sometimes when we call out to our ancestors, it's for mundane reasons, but I'll tell you, it's made me think about the beauty of the fact that so many people do keep track of grandma's recipes and grandpa's tools and the stories and
Yep, absolutely. Well, and think about, that home cooked meal and the love that goes into it.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a huge versus, let me quick take you to McDonald's.
Right.
and they're going to slap a burger out and things like that. But, I think for me, it's taking us back to maybe our rootedness and really making us, I think about my mom and dad who grew up during the Depression and how little money they had at that time as families, but yet they were able to manage, and they got through it. And it was with potatoes. It was with, it wasn't going out and buying all this, processed food or expensive food or things like that. They did it with the very simple things. And that's the other thing that I'm wondering about this experience is whether it's asking us to return to some of the simplicity of life,
Mm-hmm.
and not be so drawn in so many different directions that we just we get overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. Going back to the basics, we can't go back to the way things were because we
No.
can't. So we're moving forward, but maybe one of the things that we can bring with us forward, if I'm hearing you correctly, Kat, is that one of the beautiful things we can bring forward is simplicity. And I love the word that you used, rootedness.
The other thing that I'm really realizing is really how much I do need and how much I don't need.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I really don't need a whole lot when I sit down and in these last couple of weeks and try and think about, okay, what is it that I really need? I've got most of what I need. In fact, some of what I need, or some of what I have, I could probably give to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, to me, looking at that minimalism. And I watched there's a really good documentary on minimalism on Netflix. It's just called Minimalism. Two guys that started the whole kind of movement and drive around the United States talking to people about it. But it really made me think about, wow, I've got a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe someone else could use this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I don't need so much. So, yeah.
Kelly Spencer is sharing, I absolutely have had to surrender. I am a fighter. Well, she's what? I mean, aren't you like 110% Norwegian, Kelly, you and your dad? And I know that comes from an ancestral place. Yeah, she's a fighter. And my job right now is to stay in, be quiet, do nothing in a sense. It goes against my instincts.
Uh-huh.
How do you feel about people having to surrender right now, Nicole?
It's one of my mottos, the surrender and acceptance. We have to really lean into this powerlessness that we're experiencing. And, we still have control over, how we react and, our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions. But that's about it, and that we can control. And so, surrendering to our powerlessness, to our helplessness, and just that there's, I talked about this, I think, last month, but just there's something far greater going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
That has an intuitive force that knows, that we call the divine, that knows that what's happening, that none of us really do. So, I'm just thinking too of, the values that are shifting. Kat talking about money has been such a number one value in our society, and that's really changing and shifting, and the simplicity and reprioritizing what is meaningful in our lives.
I think of the show American Gods, which Todd and I love, and so it's the premise is that in the Americas, God is sports, money, Hollywood, right? And so the American gods right now are falling from Olympus. Right?
Yes, they are.
And so we're having to dig deep into our ancestry for the gifts, because our ancestors, they're a tough lot. And despite all of the challenges that our grannies and our grandpas went through, here we are. So, Kat, if I were to ask you to list a couple of, or maybe a lot of them, what are the gifts that your ancestors have given you through the adversity that they lived through?
Oh, wow. So I think courage.
Mm-hmm.
One word that has been coming to my mind just in the last few minutes is vulnerability. Let's see, what else?
Humor.
Yeah. I think too that One of the things is the knowledge that this isn't forever.
Mm-hmm.
That it's just one step at a time. You know, we'll get through this day, and that being in the present. So that's one of the things I think that is really coming through me in the last week and a half is I can get really projecting into the future, and looking at that future can make me very fearful. And it's very important for me just to stay where I am and to just deal with what's going on right in this moment. So I think those are a few things that I can think of.
Those are fantastic, and I would add to that compassion.
Yeah.
You're one of the most compassionate human beings I've ever met in this incarnation, and I'm sure we've been together in many.
Yeah.
And active compassion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Nicole, your family, your ancestors have also been through the Riggers. What are the gifts that the Riggers gifted them to gift to you that you've now gifted to Sophia?
I think integrity, trust in myself, trust in just this, intuitive force that lives within us and in the universe, and that, that we're going to make it through, this resilience, and finding the good, finding the gratitude in the things to be grateful for, and making things fun that, could easily be not fun. And I especially think of my grandmother who lived through the Depression, and, she would talk just about these stories of what they would do to find the joy, and things that happened in my childhood where, thinking of going camping with her when the rain's coming through the tent, and she would say, and it was just like, what is happening? I'm like 7 or 8 or something, and she's like, isn't this fun? Isn't this great? I wanted to say, no, this is awesome.
No, it was.
It really was in a way. So,
yeah.
Just trying to do that, especially with Sophia, my 5-year-old home, and, easily could take on the stress of the adults. But just really trying to make an intentional effort to find the fun in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what do you see displaying in Sophia that you know has to be, or displaying through Sophia that you know has to be ancestral?
Joy.
Yeah.
Laughter. As I'm on this phone call, I hear these giggles coming up through the floor. She's just spreading so much joy in our house.
Mm-hmm.
So allowing that to be contagious, and I could feed that, or I could feed a fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm feeding the joy. And while still very much having the adult fears and worries too, those are valid and real. But making that intentional effort to still find the joy in it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. The other, every Friday I go to Elise's place to give her some support on Fridays to cook meals together, and, to make sure that her freezer and fridge is well stocked, because Matthew is an essential worker and Elise is home all day till nursing school starts back up, her last semester. And so I'm there, to help caregive for Easton and, help make sure they have really good food in their home. And one of the things that I did with him, she was downstairs folding laundry or something. And I looked at Easton and I said, my love, you have chosen quite a time to incarnate. And those big blue eyeballs just, they look at me. And I purposefully called in all of the ancestors, all of his ancestors that I know by name. And he watched me and he listened to me as I called them in by name. And I said, all of you grandmothers and grandfathers, this is your grandson. And thank you for helping him with this journey that he's chosen. And thank you for giving him the gifts of your strength. And he just watched me. And I know he knew exactly what I was doing. And I think that we all do that in different ways. Kelly is talking about cooking for her grandchildren. I think there are ways that we call upon our ancestors for our young ones by making grandma's chocolate chip cookies or saying the same family grace at a meal or celebrating Easter the way that we typically would and have for generations and generations. And I think that even in our traditions, we keep our ancestors alive. And have either of you noticed that particularly in times like this, and, I also think of 9/11, that was a shock to everyone's system, that it's during these times when all of a sudden we do want to be a little closer during the holidays or the holy days. We do want to get together for the birthdays. And who has that German cake recipe anyway? How was it that grandma made her strawberry shortcake all of that, because we find comfort in ancestral foods and music and in being together.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Denise or Dana, one of the things that I think that we are going to have to be very dependent on the ancestors for during this time is helping people as they cross over.
Yes.
Because one of the things that's happening is that many families are not able to be with their family members when they're actively dying.
Right.
They're dying. I don't believe that anyone ever dies alone.
Agreed.
But it's the ancestors are always there. But I think in times like this, we probably need to call on them in more urgent ways. Mm-hmm. Because I think for some of these family members who can't be surrounded by the members of their living family, that it's going to be the ancestors that are going to have to be there to support them and help them. And then the other piece of that, though, I think as well is the ancestors that will be needed to help support the living members of the family, because these people are not able to experience being with a family member, to touch the body, to even see the body again. Some of them. Mm-hmm. So I think having ourselves surrounded by the ancestors in this time is extremely important.
I agree. And so, Cad, from your perspective, from your shamanic perspective, somebody may be listening right now who maybe a loved one or a friend recently passed. And, in New York now, some folks are going straight into a potter's field, burial ground. Some of them are being put there temporarily because there's just no room, or they can't move them quickly enough, the bodies, that is. So if somebody is listening to you and they're thinking, well, what does he mean by calling on the ancestors? Can I do that? Am I equipped to do that? I'm not a shaman. I'm not a minister. I'm not a rabbi. How would you coach somebody about the simplicity of what that means?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think it's just as simple as saying ancestors so in my example, ancestors on the serpent side, ancestors on the Curtis side, please surround my family member, be with them as they make this transition. And so, yes, I think that anyone can do it. Mm-hmm. It's just call, and sometimes just calling out their names. Mm-hmm. Dorothy, please be with my son as he's moving through the death process, or grandma or grandpa, or you don't have to have special skills to have that happen. Anyone can do it, and our ancestors, again, they're right there with us. They can hear us, and they're very, very happy to help out with that. So it's just a matter of asking. That's essentially what it is.
Thank you for that. Nicole, what would you add to that? Because for some people right now, it is so, what is the word that I want to use? Beyond comprehension that they cannot not only be with their loved one when they're passing, but they can't even be with them in the funeral home. They can't be with them for a burial. For many, the next time that there's any interaction, it will be with their loved one, either in an urn or a coffin like any other. What is your advice to people?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be very traumatic for many people. And just, I guess holding some kind of sacred space for themselves as they allow space for their feelings and to grieve. Getting together however they can with loved ones to share stories, to do some kind of ritual at home would be, I think, healthy as well, in terms of closure, whether it be doing writing a letter or a prayer or a sacred fire or something that would be meaningful, looking at old photos even, something that would allow them to get into touch with that person and their connection and their soul, and just to give that connection more value and power.
I like that. And I think the three of us can agree that no one ever dies alone. That does not happen. No living thing passes from its physicality alone, ever. Whether we're talking about angelic allies or creator of all things, ancestors, etc. We are in the company of sometimes multitudes when we pass. There is a celebration, a going home celebration that happens on the other side, but it's us on this side that can feel excluded from the sacredness of that moment.
Yes.
And so creating sacredness in that moment or after you've been notified, it's okay to do that. You're allowed to do that. It's welcomed. And to talk about it. And if you have to video conference a toast or two, why not, I say, right? So have a wake via Zoom, whatever it takes to do that. But to be with somebody during the process of the time that it takes to leave the physical body and to make their way back to the fullness of their spirituality, it takes some time. So being in vigil doesn't mean that it has to be sobering. It can be lively. It can be a celebration. I hope there aren't going to be any maudlin faces when I pass over, right? I want the juicy stories. I want all of that. And that also helps our loved one pass on, is to know that you're okay.
Yeah. I do think, and I think Nicole brought this up, I believe there's going to be a lot of people that are going to need assistance once this is all over.
Yes.
With trying to manage the trauma of it, and helping people, not to just stuff the feeling that's associated with us down, and to just say, but they may have to relive the experience in some ways so that they can get that emotion out. But it's just it's hard for me as a death midwife to think about this as well, that people are potentially physically alone during that experience. Because I think that's one of the biggest fears that people have, is dying alone.
Yes. And, for myself, every morning, the minute my feet hit the floor, I light a candle, and I've added yet another candle to the collection, and that is for all those who are leaving Grandmother Earth today. Maybe they be greeted by their ancestors in waves of love. And so we can do that on behalf of everyone, right? Because we are all related.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're all related. And if we were to go way, 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 way back in our ancestry, the three of us, were cousins somewhere along the line, right?
Exactly.
And at the very least, we're related by this experience of being human. But we are empowered to do that not only for our loved ones, but for those that we know need love at this time. And yeah, it's quite a time to be alive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm very thankful for the gifts that the ancestors have given me and that continue to work through me. And particularly, the strength of being that so many of them had and have, and a sense of humor, because I have a pretty good sense of humor, and sometimes that's the only thing right that gets us through is a ridiculous text message that comes from Kat or Kelly Spencer or the Superwoman video from Sophia Fix, right? When you get these, sometimes the best medicine any of us can ever receive from our ancestors and to hand down to our ancestors the next is a sense of humor.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
And that's a beautiful thing as well. So, all right, Nicole, last word tonight as we're wrapping up here.
I think just, whatever we can do to get connected to our higher selves, using our ancestors through prayer, through dance, through laughter, whatever. This world needs us to be connected right now. And there are ways to manage the intensity of the fear and the trauma response that's happening. So, just trusting in that, I guess, and that we will and are getting through it. We are getting through it.
Beautiful. Cad, what say you?
Just my biggest message would be to take good care of yourselves and to allow the silence to speak to you.
I like that. And last thought for me is invite your ancestors into your space each day to be present with you and really, really, really take the time to sit and to feel and to listen and to intuit what they would share with you about this time, because they're not going to only share about times that we call past. They also now have the ability and the wisdom to talk to us about what is yet to come and the hope of what is yet to come. So with that, everybody, thank you for joining me and Nicole and Cad this evening. Thank you for shining your light the way that you do. And thank you for bringing your ancestors with you and through you each and every day. Blessings be, everyone. Have a beautiful evening. And for those that celebrate Easter, blessings of Easter to all. Good night, everyone. Good night, Cad. Good night, Nicole.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.